In today's podcast, you'll learn vocabulary connected to prisons, punishment, and criminal rehabilitation. We'll also talk a little about the death penalty and ask the question, should criminals be helped or punished? Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello, and if you're a new listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with more than 50 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I are going to help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How you doing, mate?
I'm not bad. We're recording this episode during the famous Fires Festival of Valencia. So I'm getting my head around all the kind of noise and chaos, but it's fun at the same time. What about you? Are you enjoying the Fires festive feeling?
Not so much. No, not when the buses are rerouted and you can't really travel anywhere and it's difficult to work. And if you do hear any bangs and noises in this podcast, we apologise that there are not bombs going off in the background, just fireworks and people having fun. First, this week, we've got a voice message from friend of the show, Mamen.
Hi, Reza and Craig. This is Mamen from Badajoz. First of all, congratulations for continue working on this podcast after 500 episodes. Grateful for including me in it. Secondly, I like very much the episode of different cities of Britain. I would like to visit some of them one day because I know only Dublin in Ireland, of course. On the other side, I would like to suggest a variety of topics: homeschooling, equal gender, and the role of prisons and rehabilitation of criminals, conciliation of work and personal life, and the media and the power, work discrimination, and bullying. All of us are the topics for my speaking exam in June. Would you be so kind as to talk about some of them, please? Thank you very much. Kisses. Bye.
Hi, Mamen. It's always lovely to get a message from you. Thanks very much. And a hello to all your fellow Pathenses from Badajoz. Well, Craig, what do you think? Good message, eh?
Yes, thank you very much, Mamen. You've given us a wealth of ideas for future episodes. And as you may have noticed, we're using one of your ideas today with prisons, rehabilitation, punishment, that kind of thing. So thanks very much for your suggestions. Just one small thing in your message that I noticed, Mamen. You said on the other side. That's a mistranslation from Spanish. We say on the other hand. Okay, on the other hand. Did you notice anything else, Reza?
I noticed a tiny little thing, which some people might even say is acceptable, but I'm not sure. You said congratulations for, I think you said work, but maybe you said working, I'm not sure. Congratulations for work or working for so long, but it's congratulations on something. A preposition that some native speakers, I think, get wrong sometimes, but it's congratulations on plus ing. So congratulations on working, it should be.
Yeah, like congratulations on your birthday, for example, or on your retirement. So thank you for your kind words, Mamen. But before we talk about criminal rehabilitation, do you know, Reza, it's a crime how much money some language schools charge for lessons these days. And you don't know anything about the teacher that you're going to have in the class. So what I would suggest is why not study with us? Because we're not criminals, are we?
Well,
we won't steal your money.
There's that one story that I don't want to tell you. No, I'm joking. We're not criminals. And yeah, Craig's right. Do you really want to pay a lot of money to be in a class of people that you have to attend, which may be far away? Or would you like to use the benefit of internet and have a class with one of us. Craig, what can you offer people?
I can offer group classes in a small group of lovely students online that are very motivated, and together with me we have conversations, role plays, debates, focusing more on vocabulary than grammar, but the idea is that you speak as much as possible while we're connected on Zoom. So if you'd like more information, including dates and prices and days, etc., send me an email. You can reach me at Craig, CRAIG, at inglespodcast.com, and I'll send you back an email with more details. And Reza, how can people work with you?
So Craig's dealing more with groups, whereas I deal with one-to-ones. So if you'd like a private one-to-one class online, that's just you and me, and get in touch with me at belfastreza@gmail.com. And the benefits are that, well, we can be more flexible about what we focus on. Depending on your needs, we might need to focus more on your pronunciation, or it could be listening, could be reading, speaking, whatever. It's up to you. So that's the benefit of a one-to-one class. If you're interested, send me an email, please.
So, prisons, rehabilitation, criminal rehabilitation. We have spoken about crime before. If you go to inglespodcast.com/412 for episode 412, you'll see a list of crime idioms, but we haven't specifically spoken about prisons and how punishment works in the criminal rehabilitation system. What's the difference between rehabilitation and punishment, etc.? So we're going to look at that today and speak about that. But first, Reza, what about some vocabulary connected to prisons?
So skipping the whole vocabulary related to crime, because as Craig says, we've already mentioned that. What do you do after the crime has been committed? Well, probably the first thing that springs to mind, in other words, the first idea you have for most people is that you're going to be sent to prison. Yeah. If you're a criminal, you could be sent to prison, or the legal system could send you to prison or jail. The spelling of jail in modern English is Jail.
But is there a difference between prison and jail?
That's a very good question. Sometimes you hear people use both almost in the same sentence, referring to the same place. So it's hard to say exactly. For me, a prison is definitely a long-term place of correction. A jail might be, but a jail could also be just for a few days or temporary. What would you say?
No, I agree with that. And I think it's more common also in American English to show that distinction. A jail could be a holding cell. A cell, C-E-L-L, a cell is the room that's locked where you keep a prisoner or a suspect, someone who is suspected of committing a crime. So maybe before they go to trial, or maybe if they're just very, very drunk and they've been caught drunk driving, you might put them in a holding cell to hold them for the night or longer. So that would be more of a jail. And as you just said, Reza, the prison will be long-term incarceration.
And a term Craig's already used is to be locked up or to get locked up. So he said you could get locked up in jail just overnight if you've been drunk or something like that, and the police want you off the streets. So the penal system, the people who are responsible for punishing crimes, might lock you up. But if it's a long-term sentence, so if you're going to, maybe prison's a better word in this case, we could say that you're doing time. So if it's just overnight because you've been drunk or you behaved badly in the street, we wouldn't use the expression. But if there's been a firm sentence and you've committed a fairly serious crime...
When you say sentence, what do you mean?
A sentence. Well, sentencing is what happens whenever the judge decides the punishment for the guilty party. So they decide, okay, you committed this crime, so you will serve X number of years in prison. Or the sentence could be some other type of punishment. It could be a fine, could be the death penalty. But we'll get on to that later. So when we use the expression to do time, it will be after some kind of sentence. We wouldn't use it for someone who's just in a jail for a day or two, would we?
No. And if you're thinking, wait, sentence? Isn't that something that begins with a capital letter and ends with a full stop? Yes, it's the same word, but here we're using it in a different context, in the context of to sentence someone to prison for a crime. And the person who does the sentencing is the judge. There's another expression for doing time, and that's to be inside. These are kind of euphemisms because prison does have a negative connotation. That word prison, I've been in prison, does sound quite bad. So you could say I've done time or I've been inside. And that word inside, everybody understands it means I've been inside a prison. There's another expression, isn't there, that's a euphemism?
Yes, another one you hear is to be behind bars. So it doesn't mean that you're having a good time, working in a bar as a barman. Doesn't mean that. No.
I've been behind bars.
In that sense, yeah.
I've worked in a pub. Yeah.
But this meaning of to be behind bars means the bars of the prison door, which isn't really a door, but in certain circumstances is simply a structure made of lots of metal bars.
And so the windows too.
And the windows, of course, have bars on them, don't they? So that you can't get out the window. So to be behind bars is another euphemism for to be inside. That's if you've had a conviction. If the judge has found that you are guilty, then he's going to put you inside or put you behind bars and you're going to do time. And you will be a convict. So conviction is the legal act of finding someone guilty, and the person then can be called a convict. And the verb is to convict. Did you hear me do something strange with my voice there? Didn't I just say convict and then I said convict? Can't I decide where the stress is? No, I do know where the stress is. It depends if it's a noun or a verb. So a person who was found guilty by the judge is a convict. The stress, the emphasis on the first syllable. So that means that the judge has decided to convict that person. Convict, stress on the second syllable, is the verb.
And sometimes that gets shortened to con. You might call someone an old con, which means an old convict. And a person who is inside a prison, and I used the verb before, incarcerate. Incarcerate. That's quite a formal word, which means to be inside, to be in prison. You can see all of these words in the show notes. Go to inglespodcast.com/510 and you'll see these words written there for you. So incarcerated. A person who is inside prison, who is incarcerated, can be called an inmate. INMATE. That's quite easy to remember if you think of the word mate in British English, meaning friend, your flatmate, your classmate, etc. So if you are in mate, you're in prison, you're an inmate. But of course it's one word, INMATE, an inmate, a person who's in prison.
Now, if the inmate behaves well, they may be eligible for parole. If you're eligible, you can be chosen for something. Yeah, you're eligible. You can be chosen. A bit like the Spanish word elegir, right? Elegir, choose. So if you're eligible for parole, you may then get conditional release. Release means you can go out before completing the full sentence. Let's say, for example, that you were sentenced to 20 years in prison, but after 10 years, the parole board, that's the panel, the group of people who decides your eligibility, think, well, he's behaved very well, he's worked in the library, he's worked serving dinners, he's been a model inmate, we might let him out early. So the parole board will get together and decide whether they will give you that parole, that conditional release before you serve your full sentence.
Have you ever been inside a prison? I mean, even to look or to be in a cell for one night or something?
Never. I never have. And you?
One night. I spent one night in a cell.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, what happened?
Did I not tell you that story?
No.
Well, I was very young, 18, 19. Came out of a nightclub in London with a friend of mine, and suddenly 5 or 6 bigger guys came around and started hitting us and wanted our money. We were mugged on the street. We were attacked on the street. So we fought back. We tried to fight. We were a little bit drunk, and the police came. And the police took us to the police station, and we had to sit in a cell all night, really, until the morning, while the police took the statement and they asked us what happened. They did not catch the other boys or men who attacked us, but we actually spent the night sitting on this bed in the cell because there were no other rooms available. And we were not hurt enough for the police to officially try and find these people. There's something in the UK called GBH, which is grievous bodily harm, and ABH, which is actual bodily harm. So we only had a few cuts and scrapes and a black eye. And if we had broken arms or really serious injuries, the police would have found these people and charged them. But no, they just let us go in the morning, and I went home. So yeah, I spent a night in prison.
But they weren't ever at any point accusing you and your friends of doing anything. They just put you in the cell because there was no space.
Well, initially, in the beginning, they wanted to find out the facts of what happened. And after speaking to us for a few hours, and it was a very busy Saturday night in the police station, so eventually, when they had taken our statement and discovered what had happened, I think they decided, yeah, these 2 are okay, we'll let them go. And they tried to find the other guys, but they didn't.
You said taking your statement. What do you mean by that?
That's an official document where you give your side of the story, what happened, and then the police write it down and you sign it, and that's accepted in a court of law as your declaration of what happened, your statement. So we both gave statements, and they decided to let us go. So I do not have a criminal record. I'm clean.
In fact, you were the victim of a crime rather than the criminal.
Yeah, we were. We were completely blameless. Now, if you are in prison and you get released from prison early, before the end of your sentence, you are on probation. Notice the preposition there, to be on probation. You've got to be really careful if you're on probation, because if you commit another crime or you even get a parking ticket, you do something minor, you could be straight back into prison again. So they're watching you. They've got their eyes on you. If you're on probation, you need to be very careful what you do.
Another word that is probably used a lot in most parole board meetings, I imagine, is the word rehabilitation. So rehabilitation is the noun from the verb to rehabilitate, and it's the efforts to restore offenders, in other words, to make them good people again through education, therapy, or even vocational training, training them for a job. So, Craig, for you then, what's the difference between punishment and rehabilitation?
Rehabilitation, or sometimes you hear rehab, is when you're trying to help the person, you're trying to bring them back into society in a soft, caring, sympathetic way, whereas punishment is a lot stronger, harsher. You're actually doing something bad to the person in the hope that they won't commit another crime or reoffend. So punishment is stricter, and it's usually something not very nice. Whereas rehabilitation is more a psychological approach to help the person become a better person.
And in more modern times, some very specific ideas of rehabilitation have come into being. For example, restorative justice. So I already used the verb to restore. So restorative is the adjective from that. And restorative justice refers to the idea that they try to bring the perpetrator, the person who did the crime, the criminal, and the victim together so that they can discuss the harm done and maybe find a way forward to somehow repair the damage as much as possible. In other words, trying to restore things to the way they were before. So as you can imagine, it's a very new idea, the idea that the victim and the criminal actually meet each other. Craig, what do you think about the idea of restorative justice?
Well, it sounds good in theory, although I'm not sure if, for example, someone was attacked really badly and put in a wheelchair and paralyzed, or if somebody killed someone that they loved. I don't know how forgiving. You'd have to really, really, really look deep into your soul to find the compassion to forgive someone. So in theory, it sounds good, but I'm not sure how effective it will be in practice. What's your view?
For me, it depends on the crime. So yes, if somebody has committed a horrible crime, as you said, I doubt very much you'd really want to give them the time of day. That's a nice way of saying to talk to them. I wouldn't be too happy to talk to a serial killer who had killed someone close to me, for example. You would probably believe in the old cliche that they rot in hell, to be honest. But rot means to become putrid, just waste away. You'd be happy with that idea. You wouldn't really want to help them, would you? So I guess it depends on the crime for me. Yeah, maybe for lesser crimes, perhaps.
Speaking of lesser crimes, one soft punishment, let's say a mild punishment if the crime is not too bad or too severe, is doing community service. And that's quite understandable. You do some service that helps the community, which I actually saw once here in Valencia. I remember I live near the beach and lots of people ride their bicycles up and down the beach on the promenade, which is the part that has concrete next to the beach. And there's also a cycle lane where you can ride your bicycles. But some bad people don't ride their bicycles in the cycle lane. They ride their bicycles where they could hit a child or have an accident with a pedestrian. So I saw some prisoners a few years ago doing community service on the beach, just telling people, please use the cycle lanes. I suppose they could work in parks and gardens and do something positive to help the community as a way of giving back to society.
Now, you shouldn't confuse community service, which is a new idea, with a much older idea. And it's something which you don't see in many countries now, but you still do in a few, and that is forced labor. So the word force, to do something whether you like it or not, by force. Forced labor is when prisoners must do work that is decided by the prison system, the penal system, whether they like it or not. And the classic kind of work that you associate it with that is like fixing roads, particularly in America. You have the chain gang. Yeah, the people, the prisoners who are all chained together so they can't run away, and they have to work repairing country roads, or maybe it could be fixing roofs and things like that, kind of manual labor. I'm not sure if it still happens in the United States, but it certainly did until the 1960s or 70s. And it very much still happens in countries like China, where you have to perhaps do really, really backbreaking work if you're obliged to do forced labor.
Actually, it does still happen in the US to a certain extent, because many prisons in the US have factories and they can make a profit of up to $500 million per year. I saw that on the internet, and I've put the source, the webpage, morethanOurcrimes.org, in the show notes. And prisoners do get paid some money. They can get something from 23 cents to $1 per hour for working in these factories. But these factories make a lot of money, so it's actually a business inside the prison, which is kind of similar to what you were saying about working outside on the roads. It's very similar.
Getting away from community service and back inside, remember, that's a euphemism for prison. Who are the people who work there? Well, they're called prison guards. Or a more politically correct term, a more modern term, which sounds nicer, is a correctional officer. So that's a staff member who's responsible for prison security.
And we mentioned before what's happening in the US prisons with people working for very, very little money. The prison industrial complex in the US, the prison industrial complex, contains about 2.3 million people in prison, incarcerated in the United States. Now that's more or less, not exactly. We're going to speak about ways of approximation next week, talking about things that are not exact, but more or less approximately 1 out of every 100 American adults.
Are you sure?
Absolutely sure.
1%.
I double checked it. Yeah, I double checked it. 1 out of 100. About 0.7% of the United States is currently in a federal or state prison or a local jail. So we've linked to our sources for that information, which is amazing, isn't it, Reza?
Oh, yeah, I was really taken aback. I'm trying to get my head around it. I imagine then that's definitely the highest incarceration rate in the world, is it?
Yeah, it's the highest incarceration rate, and despite representing under 5% of the global population, the US holds almost 20% of the global prison population. That's according to Tufts University. Let me say that again. So in the world, the US population represents less than 5% of everybody in the world. However, there are almost 20% of the global prison population in US jails, which is amazing to me.
Yeah. You know what? I'm sure that's absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with how easy it is to buy a gun in America. It can't be, can it? That's a crazy idea. I don't know where I get that idea from. I'm sure there's no connection whatsoever.
Might have something to do with drugs as well, I believe. Also, solitary confinement is a useful expression. Solitary is alone by yourself, and confinement, if you're confined in a small space, you're isolated from the rest of the population. Solitary confinement, when an inmate, remember that word? Someone in prison, a prisoner, an inmate has been isolated from other prisoners as punishment. And I think they get about 1 hour of exercise per day. I don't know if you like these TV series, Reza, but I watch a lot of the world's most dangerous prisons on YouTube. And if you want an idea of what the conditions are like, then you can go and watch one of those and practice your listening skills.
Now, solitary confinement sounds pretty horrible. You wouldn't want to be in solitary confinement. But you know what? Could be worse. There's always capital punishment. Capital punishment is the formal way of saying the death penalty. So obviously for serious crimes, you may be executed. The death penalty or capital punishment. And the reason it's called capital punishment is because hundreds of years ago, nearly always, the way they did it was to cut your head off. And it comes from the Latin capitus, head. So cutting off your head.
Oh, really?
That's why it's called capital punishment.
Interesting.
But there's other ways to do it. But first, let's talk about the countries that still have capital punishment. Spain does not. But in the year 2024, there are 52 countries that have retained, that means they have kept the death penalty. I got some statistics from internet. So in order of number of executions carried out annually, the top 5 in the world are China's number 1, followed by Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the United States is the 5th. Now, China is far and away the leader. though the Chinese government refuses to say exactly how many. So for America, we have exact figures, but for China, we don't know. But we do know that it's a hell of a lot of people. Now, how do they kill you? The forms of execution still in use today. So there are lots of ways to kill someone, but here are the ways that are still used today in prisons. There's beheading, taking your head off, decapitation. There's hanging from a rope. There's lethal injection. So they inject you with something which will kill you. The electric chair, in other words, electrocution. They pass an electric current through you. Or, believe it or not, still today, they have shooting by a firing squad. So a squad is a group of people who get together to shoot you if you're going to be executed. What do you think about that, Craig? Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me when I think of the countries that you mentioned in that list. One interesting fact, though, about lethal injection, which means that your body is injected with a chemical or a drug that will kill you, that kind of replaced electrocution and the electric chair because people thought it was more humane. But where were they buying the lethal injections from? They were buying them from these really big pharmaceutical companies like Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer, who are refusing to sell those drugs to kill people. They don't want to sell them to the prisons anymore. It's bad publicity. So many prisons, many US states who have capital punishment are going back to electrocution because it's really difficult to get the actual drugs to kill people.
That's weird.
Isn't that weird?
That's so weird.
So they're killing people now by execution in states like Texas.
And Craig, what do you think? Does it work? Is capital punishment an effective deterrent? That means it stops people from committing serious crimes. Does it work? What do you think?
I'm not sure it is. No, I don't think it is an effective deterrent. And it's really interesting if you look at the statistics that most people who are killed by capital punishment tend to be really poor. They tend to be black in the US. They tend to be people who can't afford a good lawyer. And those are the people, unfortunately, who meet their death inside a prison. I don't think it's a good way to deal out punishment. I don't know what your view is.
I actually do support capital punishment for some cases, I have to say. Are you surprised to hear that?
A little.
Yeah.
What cases?
You're going to laugh. It sounds a bit ridiculous because you're going to think, what are the chances? But, I would carry out capital punishment on people who have killed or are found guilty of killing more than once. So basically what I'm saying
Serial
is...
killers.
Or just twice will do. What I'm saying is forgive everybody everything once. But a second murder? No way. So I would say for anybody who's been convicted of 2 murders, they should be executed. But I'm prepared to let off, give the chance for rehabilitation for people who've committed 1 murder, though I consider it very serious. But 2? Come on. We don't want people who've committed 2 murders in society, or I don't anyway.
Mistakes have been made, though. People have been convicted and killed inside prison, and later it's been proven that they didn't actually commit the crime. What about that? Innocent people have been killed.
Sure, I would like to think that it has to be proven beyond all remotely reasonable doubt. But yeah, mistakes are going to happen. It's true.
I am in favour, and this might surprise you, with rapists, men who rape women, having them castrated or their penis removed.
Oh, wow.
Because I think the judicial system in many countries, they go too soft on rapists. So if someone has definitely been convicted of raping someone and there is DNA proof and there's no doubt, then I think it would be a good idea to remove their penis so that they can't commit the same crime again. Now, I know in countries like Saudi Arabia, if you steal something, you might get your hand removed or chopped off. That's a bit extreme. I don't think stealing, especially if you're hungry, is necessarily a crime that means you're going to lose a part of your body. But rape, for me, is such an invasive, horrible, despicable crime that I think penis removal is a good punishment. What do you think?
Again, I would be prepared to give someone a chance to rehabilitate. So not for the first offense, but yeah, for any subsequent offense. A bit like my views on capital punishment. So now Craig's talking about corporal punishment. So not killing somebody, but causing harm to their body as a punishment. Yeah, I would be in favor of the amputation or the surgical removal of the penis, for example, for someone who has been found guilty of more than one rape.
A serial rapist.
Yeah. Well, even two. Is that serial? I don't know. For me, 2 and above is enough to justify it. And we started way in at the deep end. Amputation, that's heavy duty. That means that's really, wow. But there's plenty of other forms of judicial corporal punishment. That means judicial given by a court. So I'm not talking about corporal punishment at home. For example, a father or a mother smacking, hitting their child, that's corporal punishment. But it's not judicial corporal punishment. It's not ordered by a court. Plenty of countries still allow judicial corporal punishment. You mentioned Saudi Arabia for amputation of hands of thieves, but also Singapore, Malaysia, Iran, Qatar, parts of Nigeria, parts of Indonesia, the UAE, Pakistan, Somalia, Tanzania. So basically, all of the continents of the world. I found a few examples in the Caribbean as well, South America.
I was reading a little and doing research for this episode, and in countries like Malaysia, Singapore, caning is a very common way to punish people in public, and it's still in use today. Whipping or flogging, which means to be hit with a whip, something that takes the skin off your body.
And how many times do they hit people with the whip?
It depends on the seriousness of the crime and if they're repeat offenders. Actually, it doesn't sound too bad. I mean, I was caned at school, and I think, well, caning, how bad can it be? I was hit on the backside, on the back of the leg with a cane. That was corporal punishment in my day at school. But these punishments in these countries in public are absolutely horrific. They really do take off a lot of the skin and scar for life, and it's incredibly, incredibly painful, apparently.
Yeah, I guess it depends how many lashes you get if you're being whipped. So when they whip you, one strike with the whip is a lash. The court in their sentence will say how many lashes. You might get 10 lashes, which is already going to cause you a lot of trouble. But if you get 50 lashes, you could die because you could bleed to death as a result or be in serious agony for the rest of your life.
And I think the people actually administering or giving these lashes and these whippings and these canings, they change them after every 5 hits or so, or 5 lashes, because obviously if you keep on hitting with as much force as possible, it's going to get weaker and softer. So they keep changing the man who's giving the lash so that it is equally as strong every time.
Wow.
That would be a deterrent, perhaps, to committing a crime.
You said that you were caned in school on the back of your legs.
Yeah, kind of the bum, back of the legs, bum.
You could say maybe the buttocks, yeah? The
buttocks, yeah.
But were you wearing any clothes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, over the top.
You say
of the
obviously.
clothes.
Oh, you say that, but according
It wasn't that kind of school, Reza.
Well, according to what I discovered on internet,
not a nudist school.
Not a nudist school, but some judicial corporal punishment, even today, requires that the caning or flogging with the whip is carried out on bare buttocks. In some countries, the buttocks must be revealed. In other countries, the buttocks are closed. Usually, if it's on the back, it's bare without the clothes. It depends on the crime and the country. But no, there is officially flogging and caning of bare buttocks, even today.
I haven't been to Malaysia, but I have been to Singapore. There isn't a lot of crime there, I'm just saying. I mean, as horrible as it sounds, it's a very, very, very safe society and a safe country. So, just a suggestion there. But what do you think? Now it's your turn to practice your English, do you think convicts should be punished or helped? Are there some crimes for which the death penalty should be given, in your opinion? And what do you think about public canings and amputations? Do you think they are good punishments for certain crimes? We'd love to hear your thoughts, and you can tell us by sending us a voice message. Go to speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast, and there you can tell us what you think in 90 seconds or less. How can people reach us by email, Reza?
Well, as I said earlier, you can get me at belfastreza@gmail.com or Craig@inglespodcast.com.
And if you happen to be a Spanish speaker, and I know a lot of you are, and you want to study for free, you can go to the website mentioningles.com. And we also have paid ebooks and audios for self-study on the same website. For the store, go to store.mencioningles.net.
As always, we'd like to say thank you to our Patreon supporters. Those are the people who donate $1.50 per month to the podcast to get, as a way of us saying thanks, instant access to the transcription of the audio of the podcast. In other words, all the words we say. If you'd be interested in donating, why don't you have a look at the link in the show notes? It's Patreon, that's patreon.com/Ingles podcast. And we'd be very, very grateful if you decided to donate a little bit to the podcast.
We don't have time, unfortunately, to mention everybody who's supporting us on Patreon, although we do love you very, very much. But we will say hello and welcome to our latest supporters on Patreon. And they are Samuel Perez, Juan Gatti, Elisa Amparo del Rios Perez, Juan Carlos Alumbreros Fresneda, Garirazu, and Pilar Hernandez Garcia. Thank you to you and to all of our Patreon supporters. What's next week, Reza?
Next week's episode is From About to Give or Take. Different ways to say approximately.
So we'll be back in about a week, give or take, to talk about those expressions of approximation. Until then, thank you for listening this week. Have a wonderful week ahead, and we'll see you next time. It's goodbye from me.
And bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later. But mistakes have been but nevertheless, mistakes have been Mistakes have been maken. Come on, Craig. Maken is not a verb. You can't conjugate make to maken.
That sounds cool, though. I like that word.
Mistakes have been maken.